course. I suppose sometimes we start with a short meditation, but since people have already meditated this morning, and I would say let's plunge. Now, there's a very strong sense of community being here, and this is something that sometimes seems to be at odds with the feel that we usually get of this path, which is very much alone to the alone, and this gets drilled into our heads. It's a very individual path. We should protect our boundaries and things like that, and here we are thrown together. So I thought it would be a good time to bring a story up, a symbolic story, but a story about a group, again a community of seekers who have for some reason congregated together to follow up this quest. Now this story comes from quite an old book. I suppose the theme is very ancient indeed, but I'm going to use my resources rather than sources from this book, which was written sometime in the 13th century. It's a poetic book. It's a poetic epic written by a Sufi. The name of the Sufi is Fariduddin Attar. Many of you have heard about him. And the epic is called The Conference of the Birds. And I suppose quite a few people here know that this is one of my favorite Sufi poems, because I always feel that it is written from the core. And so if it is written from the core, it can go nowhere but right into the core. So at least this is how it is for me. And very fortunately, we have a wonderful English translation of this epic. I don't know how it is in German. As far as I know, I'll tell you a little bit about the translations that I know about. This book was translated into English for the first time sometime in the 30s or the 40s, and it was translated in a prose style. And then in 1984, an edition came out of a poetic translation into English of the Persian epic. And this was done by a couple. The man is an English poet and his wife is Persian. So the work has been done right from the Persian sources. And because the translator himself is a very masterly poet, the outcome is something very, very fascinating. And I'm going to use this translation, this poetic rather than the prose translation of The Conference of the Birds. Now, Attar lived in the early 13th century in a town in northeastern Persia, which now we refer to as Iran. The name of the town is Nishapur, and it's a very interesting town in terms of the history of Sufis. You see, quite a lot have been happening in this corner of the world, northeastern Iran, which is usually known as Khurasan, the region of Khurasan, and further to the northeast or to the east in these areas that generally are referred to as Central Asia, and I just name a few cities there: Bukhara, Samarkand, Tirmiz, all these areas where our teachers, our ancestors have been living and somehow spreading their energy through their work and their disciples there. So that's where Attar comes from, and this in itself has got some sort of energy just to think in this direction. It's also interesting to mention perhaps that in the middle of the 13th century, these areas have been invaded into by the Mongols. And this invasion has been ruthless and has destroyed completely whatever has been built, the civilization that has been built there for many centuries by Muslims and by the pre-Muslims. The Mongols, the Tatars have absolutely destroyed whole communities, whole cities, and many, many people, women and children, have been killed. Later on, probably because this special energy has been so rich in this area, the Mongols themselves have slowly integrated the Sufi energy and have actually become Sufis, Muslims and Sufis. So it's a very interesting point of transition in the history of culture, civilization, and Sufism. There is a kind of mythical, legendary information as if Attar, the poet, has been killed by one of the Mongol soldiers. It may be true, it may not be true, but we are not really following here particularly the historical data, but just to get the gist, the feel of the time in which he has been working and writing. Now in English, the title of the book has been translated as The Conference of the Birds, and I suppose in archaic English or Middle English or whatever, it really means what the Persian title means, but I'm not sure if in modern English this means the same as in archaic English, because conference is here in the sense of conferring, of discoursing, of exchanging stories, ideas, tales, and not so much in the sense of congregation, like we say today, a conference about, I don't know, whatever subject people confer to discuss. So that's really in the sense of discussion. And this is exactly what is meant by the Persian title. And in fact, the title of the book is not even Persian, although the book itself was written in the Persian language. The title is in Arabic, and the title is Mantik Attar. And Mantik really means language, or talk, or discourse. So this is perhaps we should realize that this is the discourse or the language of the birds. And this term is very important, this idiom is very important. It comes from the Quran. And I'd like to read first of all the verse in the Quran in which this idiom, this phrase, Mantik Attar, the language of the birds, or the speech of the birds, is mentioned. This is in Surah 27. And it is in the context of talking of the Quran, which is considered to be God's direct word, is talking about the King Solomon. And this is what it says. And Solomon was David's heir. And he said, Men, we have been taught the speech of the birds, and we have been given of everything. Surely this is indeed the manifest bounty. Now what does Solomon mean when he says that we, namely I, Solomon, have been taught the language or the speech of birds? This comes actually from ancient Jewish tradition, which is also based on the ancient Bible, on the Jewish Bible, in which it is told that Solomon has been granted a wish by God in a dream. And what did Solomon ask for? He asked for wisdom. And this wisdom that he was given was not only the wisdom to rule in justice and in wisdom the affairs of human being, the outer affairs of the human being, but also to understand the language of the inner. And in a symbolic way, it is referred to as to understand the language of the birds. Because the birds have been considered from time immemorial the symbol of the soul. In many respects, not only in the positive necessarily, but in every respect, the respect of aspiration, the respect of being able to be in two worlds, in the worlds of the air, of the high air, and also to be able to land on the earth. We won't go into it, but just if you somehow remember that has been so ancient, that the wisdom is the language of the birds. Now, the poem revolves around three major personalities. First and foremost, it is the congregation of birds which for some reason have congregated together in order to go for a search. And what were they going to seek for? This is the other personality. They were going to seek for the king of the birds. And the king of the birds is the sea-moog. The sea-moog is a Persian word which has a double meaning. It means the silver bird. Sea in Persian means silver, and moog in Persian means bird. So it is really the silver bird. But it can mean also 30 birds. And this is the pun that the poem really revolves around. I mean, the 30 birds who remains at the end of the journey, and this is in Persian, sea-moog, are finding their king. So all these souls, all these individual souls of the birds, the hundreds and thousands and 10,000s of birds who have separate individualities, separate egos, separate selves, are going to look for that one sea-moog, one king who symbolizes, reflects their higher self, which is one. So this is the second personality in this poem. So there are the birds and the king of the birds. And then there is the hoopoe. The hoopoe who has been somehow both chosen by the birds and also has been chosen by destiny to become the guide, to become the leader of the birds to the sea-moog. And here you have already what is necessary for the journey. I mean, the seeker, the sought after, and the guide. These are the necessary ingredients for a journey. Now, how did it come about? How did it come about that the birds congregated to start with? What precipitated them to do that? I mean, and this is a very relevant question. I mean, I'm sure every one of us had asked himself or herself so many times, why am I in this business? What for? Because there's nothing really there very tangible to seek for. So who is this king? Who is this higher self? Who is this God? Who is this beloved? I mean, it's so ephemeral. It's so far. But sometimes something manifests. And this is how the poet, Attar, puts it in the poem. What manifested that made these seekers decide to go? And here's what he writes. It was in China, late one moonless night, the Simurgh first appeared to mortal sight. He let a feather float down through the air, and rumors of its fame spread everywhere. Throughout the world, men separately conceived an image of its shape, and all believed the private fantasies uniquely true. In China, still this feather is on view, whence comes the saying you have heard, no doubt, seek knowledge, unto China seek it out. If this same feather had not floated down, the world would not be filled of his renown. It is a sign of him, and in each heart there lies this feather's hidden counterpart. But since no words suffice, what use are mine to represent or to describe the sign? Whoever wishes to explore the way, let him set out. What more is there to say? So you see, and I have always thought that it's so poignant that in this epic it is a feather which floated down, because there has to be some link, there has to be some affinity between the seeker and the sought. Who knows what the Simurgh is about? Who knows God? Who can describe the beloved? But the way the beloved manifests has to make a knot, has to make a link. So a feather floats down. And this must be so awesome, so beautiful, so unimaginably different, and yet similar, so that it sets the hearts on fire. And here all these thousands and thousands of birds coming together and are prepared now to go on the journey. And there's all this excitement and all this exhilaration, and here we are, and let's go, and nothing will stop us. But it's not as easy as that. So after this beginning, after this intoxication or becoming terribly ravished by something that manifests, could be in a dream, could be in whatever, in a glimpse. When one has made the decision, I am going to set on this journey, the problems start. And the book is very, very much about the problems. And it is the inner problems. It is very much the inner problems that really open themselves up on the journey. And the way the poet has dealt with this is very, very clever and very sophisticated, because at the very beginning of the book he describes the excuses, or rather than describe, he lets the birds talk about why they have regrets, or after this initial stage, why they decide, hey, wait, maybe this is not for me. And it's very interesting to follow up these different excuses. And I've always tended to think that it can be something to work with, because of course it relates to all and every one of us. We all have this deep down, or not so deep down, but really it is deep down, that we have one thing, maybe the last thing, or maybe there are many things that we can't give up. Maybe we can give up our diet. Maybe we can give out the locality that we live in. Maybe we can give up our profession. Maybe we can give up our children. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, a long list of things that we can give up. Not that it's easy, but we can. But then, at the core, there is something that we find very difficult to give up, and it's different for everyone. And unfortunately, it is this which has to go. And it's not as if there's someone there, an organizer, a big brother, who says, "Come on, mate, give this up and you're in." It doesn't work like that. It's just the way it is. Because and if you carry the image somewhere in your psyche, you'll understand why. Because here we come with all our individualities, and that's where we come from. I mean, we are separate human beings, separate totally, and yet we are all after one thing. So how can that be? And this thing somehow reflects us, reflects something which is unique, but at the same time unique in the same way for everyone. So that's why. It's not because this is some kind of arbitrary demand. I mean, in the way that it has been put down by poets or by mystics, it sometimes sounds arbitrary. Here is this arbitrary, wretched lover who will destroy you, who will demolish you. But it's all part of the process. So here are the birds, and they bring forward the thing that will not let them really go on the journey. And that's why I named this talk The Nightingale and the Rose. Because we can't go through all the different excuses. I mean, I suppose we can, but it will take us the whole conference, and that's not the idea. So I will just tell you, maybe read a little bit about the nightingale's excuse, and this will be like a hint or like a sign for what type of excuse there is. Now, what the nightingale says is that, hang on, I know all about love because I already have a beloved. And who is my beloved? This is the rose. That's a very traditional image, the nightingale and the rose. I'm not sure, is it so also in Western culture? I know it's very much in the Middle Eastern culture that there are many metaphors or many stories about and poems about the nightingale and the rose. They always somehow go together. And the nightingale says, I know everything about love. I do not need to seek the Simurgh. And here's, I read to you the nightingale's excuse. The nightingale made his excuses first. With his pleading notes described the lover's thirst. And through the crowd, hushed silence spread as he descanted on love's scope and mystery. The secrets of all love are known to me, he crooned. Throughout the darkest night my song resounds, and to my retinue belong the sweet notes of the melancholy lute, the plaintive wailing of the lovesick flute. When love speaks in the soul, my voice replies in accents plangent as the ocean's sighs. The man who hears this song spurns reason's rule. Grey wisdom is content to be love's fool. My love is for the rose. I bow to her. From her dear presence I could never stir. If she should disappear, the nightingale would lose his reason and his song would fail. And though my grief is one that no bird knows, one being understands my heart, the rose. I am so drowned in love that I can find no thought of my existence in my mind. Her worship is sufficient life for me. The quest for her is my reality. The hoopoe answered him. See, this is how Atta works. Now comes the answer. Dear nightingale, this superficial love which makes you quail is only for the outward show of things. renounce delusion and prepare your wings for our great quest. Sharp thorns defend the rose, and beauty such as hers too quickly goes. True love will see such empty transience for what it is, a fleeting turbulence that fills you sleepless nights with grief and blame. Forget the rose's blush and blush for shame. Each spring she laughs, not for you as you say, but at you, and has faded in a day. And so it goes on, and each bird will bring his or her excuses, and they are very interesting excuses, because as I said, they usually have to do with something very deep in the soul, a commitment. It can be a commitment to, for instance, there is a very interesting excuse which the parrot brings. And the parrot is this green bird. And the parrot says, look, my green color is not for nothing. My green color means that I have been a familiar of Khidr. Now you know Khidr is the green man, and he symbolically is the teacher of the teachers of the teachers. And he traditionally lives on a green island, guarding the water of eternal life and knowledge and all this business. And he's marvelous. How can we go without Khidr being somehow in our search? But the Hoopoe says, forget Khidr. Forget the green color. Our color is the black color of night, the color of nothingness, the color of emptiness. So you see, it's not like a superficial excuse. It's, oh, I'm busy because I have a meeting at 2 o'clock. I can't come to the meditation. That's okay. That's okay. We have our responsibilities in life, I suppose. That's the way I understand it, we have to be committed to what we are responsible to in life. But the excuses go very, very deep. And they can be connected with what we think is ideal. Idealism can be a great trap. There is, for instance, the duck who says, I don't have to go anywhere. I'm always in water, and so I'm always pure. And listen to what the Hoopoe says, because I can't put it any better. Let's see, I wrote here, where is the no, I'll have to find the duck's excuse. And the Hoopoe answers her, and listen to what he says to the duck. Your life is passed in vague aquatic dreams which cannot last. A sudden wave, and they are swept away. You value water's purity, you say, but is your life as pure as you declare? A fool describe the nature both worlds share. A fool, by the way, is a sage. Must be, a fool is always the idiot of God. So a fool describe the nature both worlds share. The unseen world and that which we can see are like a water drop, which instantly is and is not. A water drop was formed when time began, and on its surface swarmed the world's appearances. If they were made of all-resisting iron, they would fade. Hard iron is mere water, after all, dispersing like a dream, impalpable. And there is a bird whose commitment is to paradise. I'm going to do good deeds because I have been told by my religious teachers that if I do good deeds, I'll go to paradise rather than to hell. This too is demolished by the Hoopoe. Nothing really Nothing stays. And we must look into our hearts. I mean, I have always felt that the dreams are leading there. Our dreams sometimes, not always, but sometimes the dream is saying, look, I mean, this is where you are still hanging on. It's very deep. And these are usually very praiseworthy qualities or very praiseworthy commitments. So that's what's so disturbing. And people sometimes ask and say, why is it so disturbing? And is it just this fellow here, Llewellyn, who says these things, or this woman, this Russian woman, Mrs. Tweedy? No. I mean, it's the tradition. Because it's giving everything for nothing. But this nothing, in a paradoxical way, is the whole. And so now we come to this thing which brings us back to the question with which I may have even started. Why the hoopoe? Why? What makes the hoopoe able to be a guide? Probably because the hoopoe has renounced everything. Because how could he have done it? And there is a very interesting thing that connects the hoopoe with Solomon in the ancient tradition, because also in the Jewish very old traditions which somehow found the way into the Quran, there is a link between Solomon the king that I've already mentioned and the hoopoe, because the hoopoe was King Solomon's messenger. He, for instance, took the letter that Solomon wrote to the Queen of Sheba, and he was the one who took the letter back in the blinking of the eye. He took it back from Sheba to Jerusalem. So he is a messenger. He is a go-between between the worlds. But what made him able to do that? And I'd like to read to you what Attar says. And first I'll say it in a few words, so the poetic language will not be too somehow obscure. What the hoopoe says is that it is Solomon's glance. Solomon now becomes, of course, the symbolic king, because the poet can do that. It's not just the Simog, it's also Solomon who sometimes takes the role of this beloved. And Solomon, who knew the language of the birds, who knew the inner work, had glanced at him. And that's all. Or is it? They ask him, first of all, let me read this. One of the birds asked, how is it you, the hoopoe, surpass us in this search for truth? What is our crippling sin? We search, and so do you. But you receive truth's purity, while we stand by and grieve. So what makes a teacher a teacher? What makes a guide a guide? The hoopoe answered him, Great Solomon once looked at me. It is that glance alone which gave me what I know. No wealth could bring the substance I received from wisdom's king. No one can gain this by the forms of prayer. See, the forms of prayer, and dhikr is, or meditation is a form of prayer. For even Satan bowed with pious care. It's not enough to be pious. Though, don't imagine that you need not pray. You see, that's more or less what Llewellyn has said yesterday about telling to someone you have to own your bitchness. Do you say that? Bitchiness. And then she went on and spread her bitchiness all over the place, you know. So that's always like the thing. Okay, well. So prayer will not do that. So that means there's no sort of like a straight equation or a direct equation between doing so many practices, so many prayers, so many this, so many that, and getting there. Though don't imagine that you need not pray at the same time. This is necessary. We curse the fool who tricks you in this way. Pray always. Never for one moment cease. Pray in despair. And when your goods increase in every situation. Consume your life with prayer till Solomon bestows his glance and ignorance is gone. Pray in despair. When Solomon accepts you, you will know far more than my unequal words can show. So there's, you see, that's important because the links within links, I said, first of all, this feather had to drop. There has to be some link that comes from ourselves, otherwise we wouldn't be here. What are we doing here? It's so hot, we could do other things. No, something has to awaken inside, but this is not enough. Then there is the journey, all the excuses that surface up. Then the practices that we do, even though they don't get us anywhere, still we have to do them, and we have to do them, and we have to do them. At the same time knowing that it's not like we cannot control anything, we cannot manipulate anything. We cannot say, I do so many this, and then you give me so much grace, because this is not how it works. But it works through this combination of effort and grace. But eventually it is what is. I personally don't like the word grace so much, because especially in the Christian tradition it has so many connotations that maybe sometimes obscure what it really means in the Sufi sense. It's just the giving, the uplifting. That's how it is. And everything becomes smooth. So that what makes the hupu, makes the hupu the guide, nothing else. And every verse here can be pondered and really meditated upon. I could just say what comes to my mind just now, that in the Sufi tradition, the Sufis talk about two types of knowledge. There is the general knowledge, the knowledge that we acquire through studying, through learning, or through life experiences. But there is what the Sufis call the benevolent or the beneficent knowledge. And this is the knowledge that that doesn't derive from just this communication through words. Words can stir something up, but they cannot actually do it. And so, although Sufis have always respected the knowledge of the world, apart from a few who always chose to just go wander somewhere in their own hazy mind and in the ecstatic nature, but as a tradition, it's a tradition which respects knowledge. And this is very apt for us, because we all have our parts to play in life, which has to do with our professions, and we need to have some knowledge. But that's not what this knowledge is about. So it's not one instead of the other. You see, this is the other strange thing, because we always think we have to give up. It means we have not to do something, but it doesn't mean that we give it up. But we have to gradually become so spacious inside that there is room for that other type of knowledge to sort of flourish. Now, the birds are also not only are the birds, even before they start, not only are they very confused, because they are asked to declare the excuses, the inner obstacles. So this is one thing that really makes them tremble inwardly and know that it means not just a pastime, but it means so many things. But they are also afraid. And this is important. I think it happens only very, very rarely. It does happen. It does happen that everything is very simple and easy, and we never know why. I mean, there are people who are just there, who just get it somehow. These people sometimes have the innocence of children. They don't even know that they know. But it's all there, it's natural, and it's okay. They can make these movement from one realm to the other quite easily. But these human beings are very rare. For the most of us, when we have even the slightest glimpse of the journey really as it is, we become terrified. And, you know, the reference to the daughter of fire is there for you. You know, as a document. I always think of this book as a document. You know? So many Sufis have left us documents in, like Guruji said, Baisab said to Mrs. Tweedy, these things that I'm teaching you have been written about in Persian, in Urdu, in Arabic, and so on, and actually also in Turkish, but no one has written about them in English or in a European language that can be communicated to European people. So go on and do that. But this is a document, and it's a very, very much a document in the tradition. So the experience of fear, the greatest fear possible, is there for us if we ever forget it from our own experiences, which I believe we don't really. But let's see how it is in terms of the birds, what they say. The throng, namely the congregation of the birds, set out. They start the journey. But clearing the first dune, the leader sent a cry up to the moon, and panic spread among the birds. They feared the endless desolation which appeared. See, it's a little bit, perhaps, I don't know if it's easier for someone who comes from Central Asia to have a vision or an image of these huge deserts, but I suppose around California you also have your huge deserts and wildernesses. To have a physical image of this huge wilderness that nothing is to be seen on it. But let's take it from the point of view of the poem. They feared the endless desolation which appeared. They clung together in a huddling crowd, drew in their heads and wings and wailed aloud a melancholy, weak, faint-hearted song. Their burdens were too great, the way too long. How featureless the view before their eyes, an emptiness where they could recognize no marks of good or ill, a silence where the soul knew neither hope nor blank despair, just nothing. One said, the way is lifeless, empty. Why? To which the hoopoe gave this strange reply: to glorify the king. And here he tells a story. One moonlit night, Sheikh Bayazid, attracted by the sight of such refulgent brilliance clear as day, across the sleeping city took his way, and thence into the desert, where he saw unnumbered stars adorning heaven's floor. He walked a little and became aware that not a sound disturbed the desert air, that no one moved in that immensity save him. His heart grew numb, and gradually pure terror touched him. "Oh, great God," he cried, "your dazzling palace beckons far and wide. Where are the courtiers who should throng this court?" A voice said, "Wanderer, you are distraught. Be calm. Our glorious king cannot admit all comers to his court. It is not fit that every rascal who sleeps out the night should be allowed to glimpse its radiant light. Most are turned back, and few perceive the throne. Among 100,000 there is one." So you might think and say, like the birds, in that case, why? What for? There's not even the slightest guarantee. And still, because then the story goes on, or the epic goes on, and there is another layer of what one may call excuses, or complaints, or grievances, or questions, disturbing questions that come from the birds to the hoopoe. This is in the next phase, after the excuses have been voiced, and the first dunes have been passed, and all this emptiness. We talk about experiences, we talk about dreams, we talk about all sorts of things. And this too, in the end, is just like, how did Mrs. Tweedy used to call them? Carrots for the donkey. We are so tired and so distressed, and sometimes, it's so difficult. So we get a dream. We get an experience. We go into ecstasy. Sometimes it's so glorious. And then it's taken away. When I've just read the other day when I was in the Sufi house in Inverness, and I was leafing through the collection that Anati has made of Mrs. Tweedy's talks or interviews, and here's this excerpts from when she tells about the time that she all of a sudden became clairvoyant at Guruji's, at Bhai Sab's place. And wow, she said, I can see things. She came into the room and immediately she knew what state or stage or whatever everyone is in. And she could see auras and she could see lights, and she describes this magnificent orange light that everything was engulfed with. And she was so ecstatic about that the first opportunity she had, she said to Bhai Sahib, "Oh, isn't it wonderful? I have been here only a few months and look where I am." And he looked at her and he sort of caressed his beard and said, "Oh, yeah." And at first she noticed nothing, she just went home and she wasn't aware of anything in particular. She went to sleep, she woke up in the morning, she had a breakfast, she went back to Bhai Sab's place. And then she noticed it was all gone. The world was very grey again. And she said, "You took it all, didn't you?" And he said, "Yes." So here you have another thing to agonize about. So we do have dreams, we do have dream work, we do get experiences. It's very important to believe in the dreams. Sometimes we get a dream that God help us if we don't believe in it. God help us if we don't believe in it, because there has to be a language. There has to be this is the language of the birds through the dreams, and yet this is not it. So here is the thing that the hoopoe has to explain from the beginning, and the birds see it very, very early on, which I'm sure is something that we all have also. We sometimes have a glimpse of the richness, and we also have a glimpse of the emptiness, of the nothingness. So that's how it goes. And yet, when in the deeper layer of questions, the birds voice again the doubts, the things that bother them most, we hear some interesting things. And let me read to you what a bird which is described as indecisive asks or says. An indecisive bird complains, "As you can see, I lack the organs of virility." Now this is something interesting. There is a Sufi saying, I mean, this is actually not a saying. I mean, the Sufis have very much a hierarchy which is described in terms of biological growth. So the novice is called an infant. And then the infant grows and becomes youth. And on the path, you know, I mean, that's when we become very ecstatic and all sort of the energy goes all over the place, and it's very youthful, like an adolescent. And then there is the stage which is called manhood. So it's I suppose one has to say it these days because of, you know, to be absolutely politically correct, that when it is talked about virility or manhood, women are included. And this is not me saying it, it is, as a matter of fact, Attar saying it, because he said it on Rabia. He said, a woman on the path of God is man. And it's not in the sense of the gender man, but in the sense of the stage or the rung in the hierarchy of growth. So this indecisive bird declares, as you can see, I lack the organs of virility. I'm kind of androgynous, impotent, or something. Each moment I prefer a different tree. I'm drunk, devout. The world is briefly his. Caught between no, it isn't. Yes, it is. The flesh will send me drinking, then I'll find the praise of God awakening in my mind. What should I do between these two extremes, imprisoned by conflicting needs and dreams? Familiar? The hoopoe answered him, this troubles everyone. What man is truly single-minded? None. If all of us could boast a spotless mind, why should the prophets mingle with mankind? If it is love which prompts you fervent prayers, 100 kindnesses will calm your cares. I'll read it again. Okay, you're indecisive, aren't we all? But if it is love which prompts you fervent prayers, 100 kindnesses will calm your care. You make one step, and he comes hurrying up towards you. Life is an obstinate young colt until he's broken in by your restraining will. He knows no peace. But you are indolent, stretched out beside the oven, warm, content. Tears temper hearts, but living wells a rust that inch by inch reduces them to dust. You are just a eunuch, pampering his needs, yourselves grown gross, a dog that sleeps and feeds. So it's not the indecisiveness which really is an obstacle, because that's part of being a human being, sometimes caught between the yes and the no. But it is being content, it's being content really with what we have, as he describes it here, stretched out beside the oven, warm, content. So it's this placidity which one should get rid of. But the indecisiveness. And another bird talks or asks about a cowardly bird. That's also interesting. One of the birds let out a helpless squeak. I can't go on this journey. I'm too weak. Dear guide, I know I can't fly anymore. I've never tried a feat like this before. This valley's endless. Dangers lies ahead. The first time that we rest, I'll drop down dead. Volcanoes loom before the goal is won. Admit this journey is not for everyone. We know that. The blood of multitudes has stained the way. 100,000 creatures, as you say, address themselves to this great enterprise. How many die? A useless sacrifice. On such a road, the best of men are cowed. Hoods hide the frightened features of the proud. What chance have timid souls? What chance have I? If I set out, it's certain I shall die. No, this is very reasonable, wouldn't you say? Especially when we have heard that really no, not everyone arrives there. But listen what the Hoopoe says. He won't take it. You hearts congealed like ice. When will you free yourself from cowardice? Since you have such a short time to live here, what difference does it make? What should you fear? The world is filth and sin, and homeless men must enter it, and homeless leave again. They die as worms in squalid pain. If we must perish in this quest, that certainly is better than a life of filth and grief. If this great search is vain, if my belief is groundless, it is right that I should die. So many errors throng the world. Then why should we not risk this quest? Though everyone who has been with Mrs. Tweedy and everyone who has read the book knows that there is, and she has reiterated it again and again, there has to be a sense of adventure. No one goes on this journey when they prefer to be sort of protected at home. And this woman, for instance, there was this Scottish woman who just a couple of months ago or so, she had ventured to climb the highest peak of the Everest, alone, through the most difficult route, and without having any oxygen or whatever one has to have. Now this is incredible, and she made it. She made it. And of course, she's Scottish, so the British television was all over the place with her, and she's a tiny little woman. She has 2 children, she's married, she has a home in Scotland. What made her go on this journey? For goodness sake, why? I mean, I'm sure if she had died, people would say, for goodness sake, such irresponsibility. And yet you look at it with amazement. So this is the spirit. It's the spirit of adventure. And if people are prepared to die on the road to on the most difficult route to the Himalayas because they have their drive, why not on this route? Why not on this hopeless route? Why not? You see, this is really the message. So again, we read the book and we say, aha, yes, this woman, you know, this man is it's the tradition. It's there. To suffer blame for love is better than a life of shame. No one has reached this goal. So why appeal to those whose blindness claims it is unreal? I'd rather die deceived by dreams that give my heart to home and trade and never live. And so on, and so on, and so on. And one could go really into all the different questions, and they all relate to our questions, one by one. There's a proud bird, there's a miserly bird, there's an ostentatious bird. I wrote down all the different birds just to give you a glimpse. There's a bird, again, who cannot leave his beloved behind. We heard that before. That there is a bird who fears death. And this is a specific fear. And we know it from the Daughter of Fire, that one has to face ultimately the fear of death, of the death of the physical body. Because it is again part of the tradition that one must die before one dies. And in fact, the Sufis have developed a spectrum of deaths. I say spectrum because they talk about colored death. There's a black death, and there's a white death, and there's a green death, and a red death, and all sorts of colorful deaths, which mean different parts of the psyche die somehow. But it's all very nice as an idea. We can sit comfortably and talk about confronting death. But to be in that stage is a different story. And so a bird who is confronted with this fear of death asks about it. And it's very relevant for everyone. Then there's a bird who is burning with aspiration. And there is a very nice story there about an old woman in Egypt who comes to the market where Joseph is being sold as a slave. And now Joseph, according to the tradition, was the most beautiful person that one can imagine. And everyone, men and women, fell in love with Joseph as they set eyes on him. And there was, in the crowd, there was this old crone, and she pushed her way into the front row, and she said, I also want to make a bid on this beautiful slave. And everybody pushed her away and said, look at you, I mean, you don't have even the money to buy vegetables for your supper, and you want to bid on this slave. And she said, yes, I know. Still, I want to make a bid. I don't have the money, but I want to make a bid. It's this sort of thing. And so on and so forth. And time is running. I think I should just say we can go on, but we won't. We'll stop here. And we'll just slip into a few minutes of meditation, and then maybe people would like to air things. It's been the tradition here to, after a talk, for people to be able to share whatever they feel like sharing, a question, an experience, a thought, whatever it is. I mean, we are doing it as a group work. So please, come forward.
You have to make the most use of Sara. You see, we don't have her here all the time.
Sorry?
Make the most use of you. You're not
I see. Okay, well, yeah, yes, Barnaby.
As you have this wonderful translation, would you please read the question to Junaid and talk a little about that?
The question to Junaid.
The one where the woman says, "How can I learn to live a life of contentment?"
Okay, let me just see if they have it in the index. And then I'll be able to find it. Page is 115. Let's see if it's this one. Probably not. 123. Yes, here it is. A woman who wished to pray for happiness. And this is in the context of a bird complains of his bad luck. See, this is like the way it is done. First is the complaint or the question or whatever, and then the hoopoe answers directly, and then he gives what the Jungians call amplifications, ample amplifications. So this is one of the stories for the bird who I already forgot. Bird who complained about bad luck. An old sad woman talked to Mehna Sheikh. That is, Mehna Sheikh is actually Said ibn Abil Khair. He came from the one that Llewellyn likes so much. He came from this town Mehna. So the Sheikh of Mehna, she said, "Teach me to pray for joy, for pity's sake. I've suffered so much that I cannot bear to think of future grief. Give me some prayer to murmur every day." The Sheikh replied, "How many years I wandered far and wide until I found the fortress that you seek. It is the knee. Bend it, accept, be meek. I found no other way. This remedy, and only this, will cure your misery." And now he tells a story. One sat before Junaid. "You are God's prey," he said, "yet you are free in every way. Tell me, when does a man know happiness? When does his heart rejoice? I cannot guess." Junaid replied, "That hour he finds the heart. Unless we reach our king, we must depart, with all our courage wasted into night. We atoms are amazed and lack the light of the immortal sun. What circumstance, what suffering could cleanse our ignorance? An atom, looked at from which way you will, remains unalterably an atom still. And one who has an atom's nature shows that stubborn fact no matter how he grows. If we were lost within the blazing sun, he'd stay an atom till his life were done, and good or bad, no matter how he strains. A tiny atom is what he remains. Oh, atom, weaving like a drunk until you reach the sun, unsettled, never still. My patience knows that one day you will see beside the sun your insufficiency. It's an image that Attar likes to repeat again and again, and I think it is important because, how can the hoopoe or the poet talk to a group of people if not with images? And the images are very important because they make things tangible, they make things real. See, that's why the poetry is so important. It's not a philosophy. There are ideas, but the ideas are put there. Look. And so you have this atom, that's what we are, just floating, trembling atoms. And it can be said only from a vantage point that sees that sees reality in some way as it really is. Now we are so immersed with ourselves, endlessly, with our physical needs, with our psychological needs, with our emotional needs, with you name it. It's just the whole day on and on and on and on and on and on. And also our spiritual life becomes one of these agendas. And someone who sees it from another vistas has to say, look, you're just floating atoms. But this one has also the vision of the blazing sun. And the whole image is about this atom being slowly suffused and melting. So you would think, what is Sufism about? What is, and there are many mystical traditions, and maybe they are about the same thing, maybe they are not, I'm not sure. But the main image that comes again and again in the ancient tradition, as well as in Tweedy's book, in Weissab's teaching, in Llewellyn talks, is the melting, is the being absorbed in nothingness. And that's why it all goes back to the heart. There is this substance in the heart which can melt, which is made to melt, and then somehow, is this union? I don't know, but it's this melting, absorption. Another question, perhaps? Yes.
Maybe somebody could translate that into German about the melting and the absorption, because it's so central. If you love with somebody.
Someone could
translate it.
She's just arrived. Have you been here?
No.
I just was in.
You just walked in. Nevertheless, you have to translate. Maybe Katarina then. Oh.
No, I'm not that sure that I will got it. I mean, I got it, but not.
Never mind. No, you do some. See, it is. I don't know.
If you could say it again, and somebody could translate word for word.
Okay, word for word. Okay, there is the image that the poet talks is about human beings being like atoms, like very little atoms. And in their lives, they're very busy, and the atoms always think that they are huge, like elephants,
If somebody translates sentence by sentence.
Okay. Es ist.
complex.
Very complex.
Oh, the atoms think that they are huge. They're small, but they think they're very important and big.
So the people think the atoms are big.
We are the atoms,
We are the atoms.
and we think we are elephants.
Also, wir sind die Atome, also im Grunde ganz klein, aber wir fühlen ein bisschen groß.
And we get very busy and immersed in our problems and all things that fill our lives.
Und wir sind sehr beschäftigt, wir machen viel und wir verbinden uns sehr stark in unsere Probleme und gehen darin unter oder verstricken uns darin.
And the poet who stands on a higher platform can see how small we are.
Und der Poet, der auf einer höheren Ebene steht, kann auf uns schauen und sieht, wie klein wir wirklich sind.
But this is not in order to make us feel insignificant.
Das ist aber nicht, um uns das Gefühl zu geben, wir sind bedeutungslos.
But in order to work with the image that the atom at the end melts within the blazing sun.
Es ist vielmehr, um das Bild zu geben, dass das Atom oder die Atome dann mit der scheinenden Sonne verschmelzen.
And the last thing that I was saying is that this is the very essence of Sufism. That it's, okay.
Und das ist die Essenz des Sufismus.
That the small melts, is absorbed within the bigger.
Das Kleine, das schmilzt mit dem Größeren oder wird in dem Größeren aufgenommen.
So the words that I've used and are also in Daughter of Fire and in Llewellyn's talks and in the old tradition are melting, absorption, things like that.
Und die Worte, die auch in dieses Friedensbuch erwähnt ist das Verschmelzen und das Aufgenommenwerden.
Okay.
And you talk about the substance in the heart that makes this happen.
Yes,
This
yes.
is tremendously important.
Yeah, this is tremendously important, absolutely, because it couldn't be done unless we had already this substance which can melt. And this substance is in the heart. We couldn't do it otherwise. It couldn't be done.
You have to translate. It couldn't happen without the substance in the heart.
Und es kann nicht passieren, ohne dass wir die Substanz im Herzen haben.
Because it's a substance that's in the heart that melts.
Denn es ist die Substanz, die in unserem Herzen ist, die schmelzt.
Yes,
That's it.
that's it. Yes.
And she's always there, isn't she? She's there.
This substance, it's always there in every human being.
And Sarah, would it be also possible to translate this little part what you just were asked to read about the bird who had so much suffering and could not imagine to get more of this?
Aha.
Yeah, that
Yes.
she could translate.
Okay. Lost it again.
Somebody have the conference of the birds in German.
Yeah. Oh.
Yes. Yes. So maybe you can find it there. Yes.
And who has it?
Somebody have it in German?
Does someone? It exists, but not in poetic form. In a prose. In prose. Yes.
Gerda, it's at the Sufi Center.
Yeah.
So when you come, you can.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, he says it's the knee. You know, it's this knee. You bend it. I've just translated to German. Somebody else would like? Yes, of course you.
This is a confirmation.
Can you raise your voice a little bit so that people can hear?
During your talk, you discussed that indecisiveness was to be expected of atoms or human beings. But the greater difficulty was placidity. Okay. What do you mean? What is the difference between the placidity that makes you unfit to travel the journey and the placidity or acceptance that you get when you give up wanting? Or accepting with the bent of the knee whatever is?
That's a very important question. I mean, if I can just put your questions. I mean, what's your name? Sorry,
Nancy.
Nancy. What Nancy asked is, how can one distinguish between this placidity, this, content? How do you say placidity in German, or something like placidity?
Ruhe oder Gelassenheit.
Yeah, how can you distinguish between this attitude and the attitude of acceptance, which by appearance may have the same manifestations? Now, how can anyone answer that? Does anyone have an idea from their experience? I remember very, very well that I asked myself this question in context of, like, in the yoga, I think Hindu scriptures. It's a long time now, and I'm not sure that I remember. But Hindu scriptures distinguish between three types of people. There is the Rajas, there is the Tamas, the Rajas, and the Sattva, if I'm not mistaken. Is that so?
Yeah.
Yes. And the Tamas is more or less the placid, the one that find it very difficult, the phlegmatic, the one that finds it difficult to move or to do, who is very easily content, and gross. I mean, there's a grossness there, a physical grossness. The Rajas is someone who becomes excited very quickly, either angry or joyful, I mean, manic depressive, as we would say. The Sattva is a very light human being, like sages and great beings are of that. It's the nature of light, they're very light. And now, I found that helped me. With relation to your question that I confronted at that time. Because there is a sort of grossness in laziness, or in placidity, or in content. And you learn to feel it, you learn to distinguish by the
Taste.
by the taste, yes. You learn to feel it about yourself when it's just too heavy and you're too this and you can't move. And between the sattva state of acceptance, where you may not move so much, you may not be as active as you were even before, if you are a rajas person, let's say, and hyperactive, but it's light. It has lightness. It has lightness in both sense of brightness and not being heavy.
Less important.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, and the lightness.
Okay, that's so, but
yeah. I mean, you can, we learn. I mean, friends. I mean, don't forget that the whole thing is a journey, and by God, it is a long journey. And in this journey, so many things happen. And what happens? What happens? A transformation. Now, what does it mean? Sometimes I think that this transformation, especially if one is fortunate enough to be with a teacher, it's like a blood transfusion. Your blood gets transfused in the process, and somehow things feel different. So one of the things that we acquire is this sort of, call it intuition or sixth sense, or you can just taste things, you feel things by the tips of your fingers, and you know the difference. I don't know, anyone has another? Yes?
One is passive and the other is active in a way. the surrender is an active thing?
Well, if it helps you,
Not activity,
yes,
but
yeah. If it helps you to see it this way, I think whatever. I mean, there are so many ways of approaching it.
I have a way,
Yes.
not to say that I have a lot of experience with the better one, but for me, I can gauge the amount of no.
Can you speak up a bit?
Yeah.
That the lazy one has a lot of no in it. It's saying no to a lot of things. It's basically likes lying in front of the oven.
Yes.
And it's saying no
Yes.
to everything else. And the other is almost, I mean, a pure yes.
Yes.
Someone.
Yes. Yes. Mind you, sometimes people can lie in front of the iron, and they're very light, you know. So it's sometimes, and there are these endless stories. I think they come from East European about the lazy sun. You know, the three sons. One was, you know, and it was the lazy son who actually, you know, like the simpleton, like the Parzival type, you know, the simpleton, the lazy. What does that mean? You know, like so. It's also with images. One has to be very, very easy, not to take them too rigidly. An image is only an image, but yeah.
It seems also that it's always a paradox. You have to aspire, and yet you can't do anything.
That's it. Yes. And really, some people, and I've noticed it, some people are just like that, either by birth or by experiences which have nothing to do with, let's say, the group work, but they've just gone through a lot in their lives. People who had to face death and come out of it not bitter and resentful, but wholesome and whole. You know, they may have it. They don't have to be on a spiritual path. We have a woman in London, and she had suffered a lot in her life. I mean, through the death of her son, he died of cancer, and somehow there's a lot of cancer around. And recently, like the last year, she developed cancer. And now she's all right, but one never knows, and she's not young, she's 60-something, and one day, and she's becoming more and more luminous somehow. And one day she said, in the meeting, she said, and I can't remember apropos what, but doesn't matter now, she said, you know, I've been married for 30 odd years. My marriage has been good, but never terribly passionate or never terribly exciting, just good. And now that we don't know how much time we have together, it's never been better. And this is a 60-something-year-old woman, you know, and her husband is a little bit older than her. And it was very intimate, this thing that she passed on. It was very clear to the people what she meant. It affected her husband as much as it affected her, in spite of the fact that he hasn't been coming to the group and done this work. So, but it is, I think, if one sees in oneself a lot of bitterness, a lot of resentment, if this question comes many, many times, why me? What did I deserve to have this and that affliction? Gets very much in the way. But it's also a matter of nature. Some natures are like that, and some natures are not. So, but this is an indication. If you feel it in yourself, and we also have in London a woman who has been very ill, and one doesn't want to judge from the outside, but I think one of her main obstacles is this bitterness, this envy of people who are healthy or people who are well, and that gets in the way very much. So I don't know if it relates to the question, but somehow it came up. Yes, it does relate, because you asked about acceptance and so. Yes.
I just wonder if that old Irish prayer that I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it's something like, God grant me the courage to change the things I can change, accept the things I can't change, and the wisdom. You know,
to know the difference between them. Yes, it's a pearl. Yes. It's one of these things that, what can you say more? Yeah.